We are not always ourselves when we are writing. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tara East. I'm a writer, blogger, YouTuber, and the author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. And in this week's video, I want to talk about writers having two identities. So there's this trend I've noticed when reading author interviews where writers tend to talk about themselves as having two identities, their writing self and then their everyday self. So for example, Ray Bradbury, the science fiction writer, he talks about how his child self is the one who authors his fiction, not his adult self. Whenever Bradbury felt himself weighed down by the responsibilities of adulthood or heavy with dark thoughts or emotions, a sensation that he used to describe as a long, damp November in my soul. So good. He knew that it was time to reconnect or to return to that perception of his younger self, the one who is filled with mutinous joy and terrible nightmares. Bradbury said, "I'm not sure where he leaves off and I start, but I'm proud of that tandem team." A writer's ability to compartmentalize their identity not only allows them to better enter the mind of other people, such as their characters, but to also be more transparent about their own experiences. Authors who write memoirs or essays often find that writing as a form is an easier way to express or share their true self. Many writers have spoken about how it's been easier to write in explicit detail about events or thoughts that they find nearly impossible to talk about with another person in real life face to face. Sometimes they even discuss these topics in panels in front of audiences. For some reason, expressing these experiences or thoughts in their real private lives is more difficult than putting it on paper and sharing it with the public, even when they know that it is going to be read by an audience. Now, this of course would make sense if the writers were actually using a pen name, but more often than not, they aren't. They're using their real name. Perhaps this is some kind of denial about how many people are going to read the article or book, or maybe it's just simply because writing acts as a buffer. We get to express ourselves fully, we can also revise and polish those thoughts, and we know we're not going to get interrupted. And then we also, quite frankly, don't have to hear the other side of that conversation, unless of course a reader DMs or emails us. Margaret Atwood writes extensively about this notion of two identities in her book, Negotiating with the Dead, in which a writer may split themselves into two. And she personifies this as a double or a doppelganger, where there is very much a writer self and a non-writing self. The non-writing self is the one who cleans the house, goes to a day job, and does the groceries. The writing self uses the same body, only we don't recognize ourselves in the work that it produces. I think we've all had that experience when we've looked back on something we've written and thought, where did that come from? You may think of yourself as a nice person, but then on the page you're doing all of these awful things to your characters, or maybe your characters are kind of awful. We are not always ourselves when we are writing. For me personally, I see little division between my life and my writing. Not because I embed my life in my writing, but because I choose to see all aspects of my life as being connected to or informing my writing in some way. My writing self is no different to the self who puts out the rubbish on Sunday night. And yet, there is a deep focus that takes over when I'm working on a project. You don't always write the story you thought you were gonna write. Instead, instinct, intuition, and something that can only be described as magic take over. You work with the story, following whatever internal logic that the narrative creates for itself. Writing is a form of escapism, and that may also include escaping from yourself. I don't know if I fully prescribe to the concept of a distinct writing identity that is separate from my everyday self, But I can say that when I am writing and when I'm in the flow of writing, the minutiae of life falls away, and the only thing that feels real are the words that are appearing before me on the page. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you think of yourself as having two separate identities? There's your writing self and your everyday self. Or do you see your writing as a part of your identity? I'd love to know, so please leave a comment below. Now, if you'd like even more writing advice, you can check out the other videos on this channel, or you can go to taraeast.com and dive into the archives. While you're there, please consider joining my email newsletter, because when you do, I'll send you a free gift, plus you'll receive an email in your inbox every single Thursday morning, which will include links to that week's blog and vlog, a note by me, a quote of the week, and some resources I've recently enjoyed and think you will too. Thank you so much for being here and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing, because the world actually does need more books.